prayers for all who work for the city and ask your guidance as they all work together for the benefit of the city of Prescott. We offer prayers for first responders and support teams. We offer prayers for our community that all will work together with dignity and peace for the benefit of all. We are grateful as we all work to create a strong and healthy community, including the past week of celebrating our city and country. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Kirkendall?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cugnew?
Here.
Councilman Arnold is absent excused. Councilman Blair?
Here.
Councilman Lamerson?
Here.
Councilman Lozelle?
Here.
Councilwoman Wilcox? Here. You have a quorum.
Okay. Any announcements? Okay. Moving into the presentations, Neil, Chamber of Commerce, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. My name is Neil Sneller, and I'm the Membership Director for the Prescott Chamber. Well, it's been a busy summer for our local chamber. 2 weeks ago, we hosted the Bluegrass Festival, and it was a huge success. Thousands of people came out to that free event on the square. Everyone is invited to our next chamber mixer next Thursday, July 16th, starting at 5, and that's hosted by Park Plaza Liquor and Deli. The Prescott Chamber is proud to introduce these new members: AMCO, Prescott Valley, AFLAC, Barley Hound, Budget Blinds of Northern Arizona, CJ Emporium, Care Patrol of Northern Arizona, Threads of Love, Creative Cosmetics Inc., Golden Gate Media Group, Grind Boxing Gym, Jeff Stamen Massage Therapy, Lantana Development, Paychecks, Pinion Realty, The Quality Inn Prescott, Realty One Mountain Group, Simmons Appraisal Services, Singer Associates, Sparkle and Shine, Staples, Taratai Restaurant, The Local Restaurant, and Your Project MO. Thank you.
Neil, what do you do in your spare time?
I go to the Bluegrass Festival.
Very good. It was good this year.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, recognition of First Things First, Champion for Children. Jennifer, are you here? Hi there.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Jennifer Hernandez, and I'm the Parent Awareness and Community Outreach Coordinator for First Things First here in the Yavapai region. If you're not already familiar with our work, First Things First is one of the critical partners in creating a family-centered, comprehensive, collaborative, and high-quality early childhood system that supports the development, health, and early education of all of Arizona's children birth through 5. The First Things First Yavapai Regional Partnership Council would like to announce our selection of the Prescott Public Library Services Director, Martha Baden, as our 2015 Champion for Young Children. Can I have Martha come up and join me? Okay.
Absolutely.
Martha, if you could please come join me. As the Public Services Manager for the Prescott Public Library, Martha has demonstrated her commitment to serving the young children and families of this area, and we'd like to recognize her for that. I also have one of my council members here, Ann Babinski, with me.
Come on up. Come on
You'd
up.
like to come on up, Ann? Martha has assisted with our efforts to build awareness of the importance of the first 5 years of life. And to that end, she frequently collaborates with us, with several other early childhood programs in the areas, including some of our grantees and partners. She has helped us organize site tours of the library in partnership with our program Raising a Reader. She has also invited home visitation program representatives to come and speak to parents, and she's displayed materials that help support parents in their role as their child's first and most important teacher. Demonstrating her commitment to family and early literacy, Martha spearheaded and coordinated the Community Book Nook project, of which I'm sure you've seen around town, that provides free books for a variety of ages, including those for young children, in the lobbies and hallways of Prescott area organizations. Raising awareness of and building public support for the importance of early childhood is one of our primary outreach goals at First Things First. And thanks to the support and commitment of champions like Martha Baden, we are able to accelerate our efforts in helping Arizona kids ages 5 and younger receive the quality education, healthcare, and family support that they need to arrive at school healthy and ready to succeed. And so we would like to recognize and thank Martha Baden for all the things that she does to support families and young children in the Prescott community. Thank you, Martha.
We have a time for a response.
My only response is thank you, and it's particularly meaningful coming from a group of such dedicated and talented individuals as make up the early childhood professionals in this area. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I should ask you, what do you do in your spare time?
I beg your pardon?
I should ask you what you do in your spare time.
What spare time?
I think that was the point. Congratulations. Thanks very much to all of you. Okay, we're going to move into discussion items, and we're going to talk about downtown events.
Hey, Mayor. Before we do, I want to thank everybody for voting for my nephew for All-Stars for Major League Baseball. He was selected as a left fielder to play this year in Major League Baseball, his 8th year. So thank you.
And are you going to be able to watch?
I probably will have a night owl plane ticket before long.
Okay. I thought that might happen. Wonderful. Okay, Joe, when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. I'd like to talk a little bit today or this afternoon about downtown special events and discussion and a possible direction. This is the one of several meetings we've had on downtown events. And just to recap some of those, on October 28th, we brought for a presentation the application and approval process. On March 10th, we talked about policies and procedures updates, including some administrative changes that were made, and then some recommended code changes. On April 14th, we then brought back those code changes, which have been adopted. On June 2nd, we had another discussion about downtown special event timeframes, and that leads us to today. A couple things about special events. First of all, the public benefits of special events. Prescott's unique among many cities because of the appeal of the Courthouse Plaza and the historic charm of downtown. So our special events are well attended, bring a lot of folks to town. They're also a very important source of sales tax generation for the city. In 2011, visitors spent $119 million in the city, generating $7.8 million in state and local tax revenues. One event alone, the Whiskey Off-Road, had an economic impact of over $4 million. Due in large part to this, the bed tax, or the transient occupancy tax collection, has increased 40% over the last 4 years. So that's measurable. We're seeing that that's increasing, and we think the special events obviously have a lot to do with that. They're also a source of fundraising for many local nonprofits that provide services to the community. Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, Meals on Wheels, nonprofits in the community that provide services to the community. They're also held at various locations throughout the city, not just downtown. Watson Lake has got the Highland Games has been a successful multi-day event out there, so we try to spread the events around as much as we can. Some events are more compatible out at the lakes, and some events are more compatible in the downtown area. These events also allow us to showcase Prescott's history and culture. They contribute to a vibrant downtown, and they provide residents and visitors an opportunity to commune and socialize. with the positive, there's also impacts that need to be balanced, and that's the purpose, I guess, of this discussion today, mainly, is to see what could be put in place to balance the impacts. And some of those impacts are traffic circulation in the downtown business district during these especially busy events, noise, cleanup, competition with established businesses, lack of sales tax revenue for nonprofit sponsored events, street closure impacts to available on-street parking. A little bit about the special event permit process. This process, again, through all of these meetings and all the scrutiny that we put into it, I think the special event process is really very well done here. We researched other communities, we put a lot of work into it, and I think we have a pretty streamlined process. So in October, we sent out an event criteria letter to any of the events that had an event the previous year, as well as some that we might anticipate might have some. Those event organizers respond back to us by the date indicated on the letter, which is in late December. The responses after the cutoff date are taken on a first-come, first-served basis. We sit down then with the Prescott Downtown Partnership. Since the City of Prescott does not control the events on the Courthouse Plaza, we sit down and make sure that the calendars can work well together. That's an important step, and that's a step that we've only been doing the last couple years. If conflicts arise, the special events manager meets with the groups and tries to negotiate a mutually agreed upon compromise that might involve moving the date or changing a venue, or possibly even combining events. The event organizers are required then to complete the special event application. They then go to the special event committee meeting that are held monthly, and at those meetings we have representation from most of the city departments such as risk, legal, tax and licensing, engineering, traffic, sanitation, police, fire, a city council liaison, as well as Yavapai County Health and the Prescott Downtown Partnership. So each department that is going to be impacted by the event gets a good look at things to mitigate any kind of exposure or any kind of detriments. The final step is a review of each application by the Special Events Committee that I alluded to earlier, and we may modify, approve, or deny that application. Last year we established event levels. We noticed that obviously some of the events, especially around the Courthouse Plaza, that are larger, maybe required a little bit more scrutiny, so we broke them up into level A, B, C, and D events. Any of the events that we're talking about today are going to be level A events. I won't go into too much about the other levels other than to point out that the level D, the private property events, they're not regulated through the approval process since they're on private property. We do encourage them to fill out the application so we can get feedback from police, fire, and whoever else might have concerns about parking or safety or whatever that might be. The tax and licensing requirements for nonprofit sponsored events. The sponsoring nonprofit must obtain a nonprofit permit from the City Tax and Licensing Division. Proof of the nonprofit status must be provided, and there's no fee for this permit. The nonprofit is then responsible for collecting a $25 fee from each participating vendor, or that's equivalent to 2% of $1,250 in taxable sales. If the event lasts longer than 3 consecutive days, there's an additional fee of $10 per day per vendor. The nonprofit must submit the fees collected along with a list of all the vendors to the Tax and Licensing Division within 10 days. The vendors selling their own original works of art, or vendors supplying information only, or farmers selling their own produce, and nonprofits are exempted from the $25 vendor space fee because they are not engaged in taxable sales. None of those activities are taxable sales. The tax licensing requirements for events not sponsored by a nonprofit are a little different. Each vendor must complete a transient merchant application with pictures of each person working the event and a privilege tax application. Fees for each vendor: $25 privilege tax license fee, a $50 transient merchant fee, a $10 identification card fee for each person working the event. Cash bonds must be posted in the amounts of $200 for the first person and $100 for each additional person, up to a maximum of $1,000. A local privilege tax of 2% is paid on all of those sales. Why events sponsored by a nonprofit are treated differently. According to City Code 4-4-3D, exempts vendors that are part of a nonprofit event from the transient merchant and transaction privilege tax section of the City Code. The City Code 4-4-7 assesses the nonprofit show fee of $25 per vendor for events up to 3 days and $10 per day over 3 days. If the exception in 4-4-3D is eliminated, vendors at nonprofit shows that conduct taxable sales will be subject to the transient merchant tax and the transaction privilege tax sections of the code. So if the exception in 4-4-3D is eliminated, the sales by a for-profit concessionaire selling liquor for a nonprofit who receives a portion of the proceeds would be subject to the transaction privilege tax on 100% of the sales per 4-1-270. The Model City Tax Code does not provide for a deducted amount of contribution to nonprofits. Prior to the adoption of the City Code in 1988, the procedures for the nonprofit event licensing was complicated, difficult to track for the vendors, and difficult for the city to administrate. They would have to go back and try to catch up on everything that had transpired, and in a lot of cases, the merchants are transient and they're here and then they're gone, so it became an administrative problem. In fiscal year 2015, $24,225 was collected from nonprofit show vendors, which is equivalent to $1.2 million in taxable sales activity. A little bit about the Series 15 special event liquor licenses, which are the liquor licenses that go with these special events. The purpose is to allow a charitable, civic, fraternal, political, or religious organization to sell and serve spirituous liquor for consumption only on the premise where the spirituous liquor is sold, and only for the period authorized on the license. A couple bullet points about those licenses. It's a temporary license. The applicant must receive approval from the governing body of the community where the event will be held prior to the state issuance, so City Council approval in this case. The qualified organization, the nonprofit, must receive a minimum of 25% of the gross revenues from those liquor sales. They're issued for no more than a cumulative total of 10 days in a calendar year per qualifying organization. So each organization has up to 10 days that they can use. The number of events at one single location cannot exceed 12. And here's some of the Arizona statutes and regulations that apply to this special event liquor license. And then just finally, all state liquor laws are enforced by the state liquor control. Okay, as I said earlier, for today's discussion, we really want to focus on the events in the downtown business district, and this is how the downtown business district is defined. On the north side, it's Sheldon. Essentially, on the south side, it's Carlton and Goodwin Marina on the east side, and on the west side, Summit. So this is the definition of the downtown business district. So events in the downtown business district in the public rights of way in 2015, and some of these events have happened and some are proposed to happen and are going through or have gone through or are going through the special event committee. There was 20 events that requested street closures in the downtown business district in 2015, affecting 25 days. Street closures around the courthouse plaza, to define that's the 100 block of Montezuma, Goodwin, Cortez, and Gurley. I wanted to illustrate that because that is the heaviest impact. We do have some others. The KC Car Show has an event that's on Willis Street. So there's a few others in the downtown business district, but far and away, these 3 or 4 streets are the most have the most special events. So Cortez had 8 events that impacted 12 days, parts of days. Montezuma, the 100 block of Montezuma, had 7 events that impacted parts of 10 days. Goodwin Street had 7 events that impacted parts of 12 days. And Gurley Street has 1 event that impacts 1 day, and that's the Acker Music Festival. The Spaghetti Western was on Gurley, but it was not in the right around the square. So for the purposes of what I want to show here, I didn't include that. Obviously, we try to keep Gurley Street open as it is the east-west connector on that side, so that's why it's impacted a little bit less. Now, when we talk about hours of operation, there was 3 events from these 20 that operated after 10 o'clock. There was 3 events, the same 3 that operated after 8 o'clock. There were 7 events that requested special event liquor licenses. None of the events are serving alcohol past 10 o'clock, that being last call. And 3 of the events are serving alcohol past 8 o'clock. As much as information as I could put together on the private property special events, I tried to do here so we could kind of illustrate what else is going on in the downtown business district that's not on the public right-of-way. Again, it's not regulated through our event process, but we do like to know what's going on in case there's impacts to the public. And again, the liquor license, the special event liquor license, must be approved by the city council prior to state issuance. There was 5 special events on private property in the downtown business district that have been held or proposed to be held in 2015. One of those events operates after 10 o'clock. 3 propose or have operated after 8 o'clock. And 4 will or have applied for special event liquor licenses. So to boil down some of the key issues that we hope to have a discussion about here today are event timeframes. Should there be a limit on timeframes, number and frequency of street closures? Should it be distributed differently? Should there be less? Do we have the right amount? Congestion of multiple events on specific high-traffic weekends. As an example, the Bluegrass Festival, 2-day wonderful, wonderful event. We also had the Spaghetti Western going on the same day, one of the days there. So multiple events on the same weekends. Cost recovery for services. Sales tax collection, for-profit, nonprofit, competition with downtown businesses. So some of the refinements that maybe we can discuss today that we've got up here, and certainly there are others, and by having a discussion we may flush out some others, but Council could enact a resolution or an ordinance limiting the hours of operation for events requiring street closures in the downtown business district and provide some specific exceptions like the boot drop, which obviously goes at 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock. We could, and we certainly do, try to market and promote other city-owned facilities outside of the downtown business district to encourage events to relocate. Watson Lake's an example, and there's others. Pioneer Park, plenty of others. Council could consider establishing an appropriate fee for street closures in the downtown business district that would help offset parking impact, reduction of sales tax collection, and to better provide cost parity with rental costs at other locations like Mile High Middle School football field or Watson Lake, and that revenue then would be dedicated to the general fund. You could also consider adjusting the vendor booth fee for nonprofit sponsored events. In other words, $25. Maybe you would consider raising that to $35 or $50 or whatever council might see fit. And then finally, just something that we will continually do, it goes without saying, but we want to conduct an annual review and public outreach regarding the event permitting process to keep the public engaged and the business owners engaged so that we can be doing the best job that we could possibly do. So with that, I'll open it up to any discussion.
Greg.
Thank you, Mayor. Joe, thanks for all of this information. I really want to summarize the purpose of this discussion and not get it confused. I'm really not concerned what happens on private property or our parks. Okay, there's already things implemented for that. My biggest concern is as we as a city who close down a street, other than trying to enhance the quality of our downtown, whether it be a street lighting or a parade, we are becoming direct competition with the people that are collecting our sales tax for us in the downtown district area. So I'm really looking at, and I don't want to confuse one with the other, with the 25, 75%. What was the other one? I'm here for primarily the time frame for which the street closes, that we close down a street and we are affecting a downtown business as a municipality. And the businesses are here to make money for themselves. They're here 365 days a week. They collect our sales tax for us and give it back to us, and we're impeding that by basically becoming a foundation for every type of event that somebody thinks they need to raise money for. That's not what we're here for. If the Boys and Girls Club or XYZ, they want to have something, there are a million venues to go to and have their fundraiser. They don't need to come to our street because it's the downtown and close it down for their fundraiser. Now, we close it down for our quality and our enhancement of why people love Prescott, whether it be for a parade or a courthouse lighting. I mean, people come for that. Wow, this is great. This is what the downtown is for. I don't think it should be used to close down a street to raise money for a nonprofit or for Whiskey Off-Road, we can select that one. But I say 8 o'clock, it's done, it's clean, and it's back in business again. Because after 8, we are really affecting the downtown businesses.
What about the retail people that we affect before 8 o'clock? Under that way of thinking, then we should probably shut it down.
You know what I'm thinking is we don't shut them down at all, except for the parades or the courthouse lighting.
Yeah, thanks. Just want to be clear on that. I think one of the things that came up is a little bit off the subject that you were talking about, but it was brought up by one of the owners down there, and it's the private property. And I think right now there's a spirit of the law, and I think there's a letter of the law when it comes to these special events. And I think that they had to create a liquor license for these special events because they had to have some place to categorize it. But did that mean that someone was supposed to be able to use that to simulate a bar? And I think that's one of the things that one of these businessmen was concerned about, and that we see is starting to happen downtown a lot. Is it when one of the establishments was having a hard time getting open, and I think he ran 12 special events back to back until his liquor license could come through. Was that the spirit of the law? I think absolutely not. But did it go with the letter of the law? Yeah. And why did we do it? It's because it's Prescott, and we help each other out. That's what we do. And it got him up and running, and now it's a great establishment down there. I see the holiday courtyard starting to fire up, and they're using some really good holiday weekends to promote business. I understand it was really packed over the 4th of July for a long time. Is that taking it away from the other businesses? Should they really just get a liquor license themselves? You know, I think it goes against the spirit of the law, but it is the letter of the law. It is private property, and I agree with you, Greg. I think we should leave that alone right now until the law changes, because it is allowed and it's been used. I think it's going to become a problem in the future with when you see more of these lots understanding that now they can take 12 of the best weekends Prescott has to offer and make a pretty good profit by opening up a bar for those 12 without actually having to incur the expenses that come along with being a bar. The one thing that really bothered me from this conversation going forward was when one of the promoters that I've watched create great events in the city and push them forward and grow them really big, his integrity was questioned on where the accounting for the money that going to the charity goes to. And I think bottom line on that, I don't think it's our problem. It's not our business to get in the middle of that. That's between the promoter and the charity. You know, I look back to a lot of things that have happened, and you know, here we're screaming about one guy that runs his thing, but when we had the Whiskey Row fire, we had a giant event that raised a pile of money to rebuild and to help pay the wages of the workers that were displaced. You know, we didn't rebuild. Did the workers get any of those wages to help them until they found a new job? I have no idea. But you know what? It's none of our business. That's between the promoter and the people that would get that money. The events for the 19, tons of money raised. Did we go out there and we say, hey, where did that money go? You know what? It's none of our business. It's between the promoter and the people, the charity getting the money. We hear people say that, you know, I give a lot to charity. Well, we've never asked how much you do. It's none of our business what we do that. So when we get up here and we publicly criticize someone and call into question their integrity, especially after I watch them, it really rubs me the wrong way. when it comes to the street closures, I think the events that we have downtown, we have it documented that they help our economy out in a big way. And I think that's why a lot of people come down to see what's going on in Prescott. One example that happened this weekend was Channel 3 was here doing their broadcast, and they broadcast on I think it was the Friday, and for 4 hours they went off with their broadcast at 10 o'clock. At 10:30, Expedia had 100 people searching for accommodations in Prescott. That's just one website out of all the websites, and they were very, very busy. This kind of thing, having these events, having things go on in Prescott brings people to this city, and it does generate tax revenue in other ways than just the event. You know, when you see the hotels filling up, or the bars filling up, or the restaurants filling up. I've always wondered about the capacity when the events get very big downtown, and you see, you know, maybe 1,000, couple thousand people down there, how much we could really hold if we didn't have that special event. I still don't know where that number is. It's never been told to me, but I don't think we could handle that if we didn't have those events. And I know that people are spending money down there all the time anyway. So anyway, that's where we go. I'm kind of disheartened on this because I thought they were very good for downtown. But whatever the council decides, I'm willing to go along with.
Okay. Jane?
Thanks, Mayor. Not all events are the same, so I think we really have to focus on the events that may make Prescott famous. 4th of July, the Whiskey Row Marathon, the Whiskey Row off-road race. For those events, I could see extending the length of time and also closing Montezuma. But for other events, I think closing Montezuma is a bigger problem than closing Cortez, because Montezuma is a state route 89, and there's a lot of traffic that goes through that way, turns up and down Gurley. It's a lot less intrusive to close Cortez and then use that side of the courthouse square as an extension of the square into the street. So I would favor looking at Cortez as opposed to Montezuma. That might relieve some of the congestion in general with the traffic flow. Multiple events, I think that really has to be looked at by the Special Events Committee and try to calculate, you know, the conflict in time, and will the same audience be participating in both events so that they're parking in one place and enjoying two events. Cost recovery for services. I don't think the public should be subsidizing any of these events. I think they should be 100% cost recovered. If we have expenses with police and fire, security, parks and rec, putting up facilities and so forth, those should be charged, even for nonprofits. To me, I think it's fine to use a public street for a nonprofit fundraising event, but they should be contributing to the public cost for using that space because it's a public asset. Those are my comments.
Okay. Anyone else? Jim?
Yeah, I'll make a comment. Living down there 365 days a year. Whether it's Montezuma, whether it's Cortez, whether it's, you name it. You know, when you close streets to the tune of 20 days a year, that's a lot of inability to get to your business, a lot of inability for customers to get to your business, whether the customers be from Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, Yavapai County, etc. A lot of the folks that come to special events aren't necessarily from those areas. Some of them come from out of town, and while they're all appreciated, the biggest competition, of course, is for parking. And then when you deny access to businesses on top of it by closing the streets so that the event coordinators can absorb all the parking, that creates a little bit of heartburn. At the end of the day, I think it's incumbent on the council to figure out how to manage the streets and what to do with public streets. And, you know, I've sat here now for a while, and we hear a lot of stuff about people not being able to do this, or this, being able to get to their home or being able to get to their business or being able to do this all over town. 20 days, actually it says here 25 days, in a 2-block area seems pretty abusive. But we also have to keep in mind that the downtown is a cultural center of really not just the city of Prescott, but the entire Yavapai County area on this part of the mountain, or this side of the mountain. So you have a lot of people coming here for a reason. And it's because Prescott's not Prescott Valley. Prescott's not Chino Valley. Prescott's not some of the areas in Yavapai County. Prescott offers something different. Part of that difference has to do with those 25 days. So I'm not quite sure exactly where to go. I do, having a storefront down there, feel as though maybe I've got my own ox to gore, you know. Gosh, I feel like I'm being picked on, wine, you know. But on the other hand, at the end of the day, what benefits the city as a whole? That's what I always try and look at. It's a price to be paid, but gosh, when you mess with those downtown events, you may be messing with something a lot bigger than any one business. And that's what you got to take into consideration when you sit up here and you talk about doing this, or this. 25 days seems abusive. On the other hand, who wants to say shut it down for the Christmas parade? Who wants to say shut it down for the 4th of July parade? Let's shut off the boot race. Okay, you know, I don't like riding bicycles anyway. Let's dump them. You know what? I've been listening to this for 36 years. You know? 36 years I've been dealing with this. And at the end of the day, Prescott's still here. It's here because we have something different than any other spot in the state of Arizona. It's around this plaza. That's what it is. It's around this plaza. And I think anything you do to damage the marketing efforts of people to collect around this plaza, you will damage the economy of Prescott. I've said that for many years.
Jim, I agree with you. But what I'm suggesting is we put whatever that is, those 25 days, whatever those mainstay events are, that there is a time limit, there is this day, there is this event in this ordinance, so everybody knows what it is. So anybody that comes in and opens a business, they know 25 days a year, this and this is going to be closed down. I'm just looking for framework, so we're not leaving it on the events people. We're not leaving it, somebody new comes in town, we leave it to the businesses to come here and look like that they're complaining about it. It's already written in as an ordinance. If this is an important event, like the 19 or the Whiskey Row fundraiser, that person or that organization comes to us and says, we would like an exception because, and otherwise, all variances, they just come to us. Otherwise, the ordinance just is stated, they close here except for ...
Greg, I understand all of this. Okay, I truly do. The area that I would probably get the most critical of is the way we handle fees, the way we handle using government to set up winners and losers by not collecting taxes that are applicable for events, set up certain people's privilege to pay $25 to do something differently than store owners get, bar owners get, or anybody else get around the place. And what we do is sometimes we use government to benefit some people while you mess with the others. And that's where I have heartburn. So, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to fix it if it needs to be fixed. But then again, if it's not broken, in the 36 years I've been dealing with it, Prescott still has good tourism. Prescott still has people coming down here all the time. You know, they may not come on Saturday because they can't get here, they can't park, but they show up on Tuesday. So what else can I say on that?
Yeah. Anyone else at the moment? Joe, this is a conversation between you representing the committee and the council at this moment, and we're going to ask for public input in a minute. But I think my first question is, this fee structure, according to this, was established in 1988. That's 25 years ago. What else are we doing in Prescott today in the way of collecting fees that's been the same for 25 years? I doubt if there is anything. So to me, that's a very important thing that we, so many of our enterprise accounts, we say that we should at least break even. And to me, that's a real question, is whether we are breaking even on some of these events the way that we're doing it. The tourism department generally is funded by a bed tax. So the events that we are using to create maximum bed tax, it would seem to me that those are the ones that we should give importance to, particularly when it comes to closing streets. Do we have a list of those that are most important to the community for that type of generation?
Yes, Mayor, we do. We know the events that have been sponsored by the bed tax in the past. Some events don't apply for it. Some events just they can run on their own and they don't go through the application process. But for example, the bluegrass, they go and get some bed tax money for that great event. And a lot of the ones in the downtown business district are probably the ones that we're talking about. But I can look at that a little more detailed too to see.
It would seem that some of the events that are put on by nonprofits could almost be handled any place, because the nonprofit itself is the one that's trying to generate attendance at those events. And I have a little bit of difficulty thinking that we should be closing streets for nonprofits. Generally, we know that we can't generate sales tax from a nonprofit event, but we're encouraging some major expenses when we close the street. And it may not be obvious, but the fire department, police department, and street department all still have to provide their services, and particularly in an emergency. So I think it's going to be more than what we set policy today. And maybe the committee, maybe we should have 2 or 3 of our council people sit down with you and the committee and discuss some of these things much more in depth, so that maybe we can learn more, or particularly have some idea of what some of the internal costs are. I think we do have to determine a number of major street closures, and then try to fit the events that carry the most importance into those as a starting point. And that's just me. Chris,
Mayor, I just wanted to say, I think something that would solve a lot of this is something that I've been trying to push forward for quite some time here, and I know you've put a lot of work into it yourself. I think we need a dedicated downtown events venue, someplace that will hold these things. I've been watching for 15 years as these events have grown, and like I've said, I've seen them sober and all the way through, because I have to drive porta-johns back to their home every closing time when they're over with. But if we can work with the school district to use that junior high ball field in the summer, I wouldn't be opposed to spending a little bit of money to dress the front of that up. And I know you've suggested this as well. And if we had it there, we're 50 yards from a parking garage that holds a ton of people to keep the stuff off the streets. And we could put all of our events down there and not really have to worry about the street closures. I think maybe we should put a little more effort into making that a reality and working with the school district. I know we don't have control over that, but like Jim says, a lot of times it's the same taxpayer, and I think you said that too, that we need to work together to make downtown function properly. And I see the problems with Whiskey Row. I just don't want us to pick and choose the events that go on down there and say, okay, well, we like this one, we don't like this one. I mean, if we move them, I think everything has to go. And sometimes we throw around nonprofit like it's somebody trying to run a scam, but you know, this is Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Habitat for Humanity. These are all people that need money to carry out their core functions, and they do good things in our community, and that's how they raise their money. They aren't getting support by taxation, they aren't getting it from the city. They're coming to us and they get these events, and that's what makes them happen. So anyways, dedicated downtown events venue, I think would solve a lot of our problems, and I think would be a huge success.
Excuse me, Mayor, if I could, Mayor, just to point out, Councilman Kuknio, that we have been having some discussions with Prescott Unified School District. We do expect that we'll go to the school board on the 22nd or 23rd to present for a couple of events to be held on the Mile High Middle School football field. So we are looking at that as an opportunity to relieve some congestion downtown while still being able to grow the events.
And I think not only that, Joe, but we get the events of the tourism, but maybe the school district can also raise a little bit of funds because we know they're kind of tight as well.
Okay, Gene.
I have a couple of questions. Either Joe or Mark, you could probably address these. The cash bond, what is the bond for?
On the transient merchant license?
Yes.
As you point out, there's a cash bond for the for-profit events because they have to get ID cards, they have to submit their privilege taxes to make sure that they return all their ID cards after the event and also file their tax information.
Are we sure that it's adequate to cover
Depends on the event. It depends on the event. I mean, and as you can see, it can be up to $1,000. So, you know, that's quite a bit. That's quite a bit of sales, depending on the length of the event. And again, that's only on a for-profit event, and there are only a few of those that do that. Whiskey Off-Road is one of those. A couple others, but they're not really in the downtown area. And again, these fees on slide 7 and slide 8 are citywide, not just in the downtown.
And with regard to the collection of taxes, the local privilege tax of 2% is paid on all sales, according to your handout here.
For the for-profit sponsored events.
How is that accounted for? How is that tracked?
I mean, they file their tax return like every other business in town and pay their taxes.
Okay, there's no automatic cash register, no computerized?
No, there's no...
Okay. It's an honor system then?
All tax systems are the honor system, whether it's your income tax or your sales tax.
Okay.
But we do have audit ability, and we do go out and verify honor.
Okay. Do they also pay state sales tax?
Yes, I mean, it's due. I mean, again, you say, do they pay? Do they pay? I mean, yes, it is a taxable activity. Yes, they should be paying tax, state tax and local tax. Again, that gets back to the honor system and, of course, the audit potential that is there.
Okay, thank you. That's good.
Steve?
I'll just make one brief comment. I don't believe there's any nonprofit that is out there that should ever have one of our streets closed down, period. There's tons of venues for it. It's not necessary. When you start talking about firefighter charities, they have cantina night on a private parking lot, you know, behind the Gurley Street Grill. You've got still, again, Prescott Charities having their horseshoe tournament out at Watson Lake Park. It's about advertising. It's about publicity. It's about supporting a cause, and it shouldn't be about closing our roads down for nonprofit. The reason why we bring in these different things in downtown community is generate a sales tax revenue that we've all talked about in tourism in this community. If it's one of our signature events, whether it's a bluegrass or whether it's the parade or the courthouse lighting, all those things benefit an atmosphere in our community in the downtown Prescott. Prescott Valley doesn't have that downtown atmosphere. Chino Valley doesn't. We do. And I think we need to make sure that our signature events are just that and not continue to proliferate the expansion of closing roads down for nonprofits. They have ways to make their monies in different places, and it doesn't mean right in the middle of our roads.
Jim?
Thanks, Mayor. Found some common ground with my colleague to my right here. I don't think we belong in the censorship business in a free market environment, to be very candid with you. Remind my colleagues that one of the most successful events in Prescott emanated out of the free market. It's called Acker Night, which is also nonprofit. I would hate to think of all those people down there on Acker Night with people zooming through town with unenforceable speed limits, etc. So I just comments. This is one of those deals that we're dealing with. Okay, I'm not for shutting down Acker Night either, or the courthouse lighting, or anything else that would, I guess you could put it under the guise of nonprofit or however you want to deal with it. And I do agree that there are some nonprofit events that abuse the system, very similar to nonprofit storefronts that peddle stuff that's donated and CEOs make lots of money. But the fact of the matter still remains, that's not what we're dealing with here. What we're dealing with here is what's taking place in the cultural center of downtown Prescott, Arizona. And, you know, it's one of these things we're going to have to come to grips with. I think I agree that there are signature events, and they vary. It's to the level of benefit for the entire community. I agree with Gene that there are some things that some of the nonprofits do that defray cost off of the backs of the taxpayer with regards to helping people who can't help themselves. So I think you kind of, and that's why we have an events committee. That's why we have certain people that we're trying to deal with, and they're looking for some sort of a policy statement from us. I believe that's what's coming down the pike here. So I think the idea of looking at traffic flow, public safety, of course, the ability to help all the people of Prescott, that comes through. We need tax dollars to do certain things, like provide some of the basic services. Police and fire come to mind. General fund comes to mind. So I'm glad we're having a discussion. I just don't know where to take it at this point.
I think we need to define period signature events. That's what Prescott's all about. And by defining signature events also defines what roads generally would be closed down or not.
Yeah, Mayor, you know, I'm the liaison to the Prescott Downtown Partnership. They meet a lot, and one of the goals that they always had was to try and expand downtown. We had the map of the downtown business district up here, but really, what are we talking about? Usually, when you talk about downtown, you talk about the 3 streets that surround the courthouse square. One of the goals has been trying to move it off, move some of those events off, and there's businesses that are maybe against the street closures, but there's just as many that are for the street closures. The Firehouse Plaza, they were dying for events to go on in front of their business, and they are a bar. They serve liquor, they serve food, and they were dying to have events put on in front of them. We just had the Spaghetti Western. Well, that was Rosa's, and they wanted that event to come down in front of their street and close down their street and run it. These are the businesses right in front of these special events, and they're actually welcoming them down there because they don't see anything. Everything's up there on the 4 streets that surround the courthouse square. And you know, one thing that we got to keep in consideration, sometimes we say promoter like it's a dirty word, but it takes a pro to put on these events. And if you're not a pro when you put on these events, bad things can happen. I was at an event that wasn't put on by a promoter, and I saw a lot of liquor violations going on in there. And you got to be very careful with that. If you're a bartender, you can't drink. If you're working, you cannot drink. There's things that you got to have somebody watching over all the time. The promoter typically just keeps an eye on and keeps it all put together. Everyone thinks, oh, we're just going to throw up some tents, we're going to sell some beer, and we're going to make a lot of money for our charity. Well, it takes a lot more than that. It takes a knowledge of the liquor laws, a knowledge of how the fencing has to be placed up, a professional staff serving, a professional staff on security, and proper entrances and exits. So it takes a lot more to do these events, and I'd like to see us work a little bit closer with some of these people to make sure that these events don't go south, because the one that I saw going on, I didn't like what I saw happening in there, because it could damage our special events moving forward.
Okay, let's go to the public for a bit here and not dwell on it too much. Somebody going to represent Montezuma?
Well, I'll represent me and maybe Montezuma. Dave Michelson, the Palace Restaurant and Saloon, Mayor, Council. First of all, we're not against special events. We're not against street closures. All we're asking is that it's, a level playing field. And as far as the nonprofits go, we're supporting them also. I'm not in the business to do an event. When we did the 19 and the Whiskey Row Fire, which I was honored and privileged to be involved with, 100% of all that money went to the charities. Chris donated his porta potties. Everybody was very supportive of that. But I'm not a promoter. I wasn't doing it for the money. I was doing it because I felt it was my duty, along with the other people that helped with it, and there was hundreds of volunteers. So that's not what we're talking about here. What we want is, if there is a for-profit person putting on an event, we just want to make sure it's a level playing field. Tommy brought up a lot of good points when he spoke a couple times ago about even our music license fees. Are they paying music license fees? We pay them all year long. Are they paying their sales tax? And I disagree with you, Chris, as far as the city, it's not their business. It is their business as far as I'm concerned. A lot of these events use the city stage, that's the city. When they close a street, it's a city street. So the city, in my opinion, should care what's coming in, where the money's going, who's getting it, et cetera, et cetera. I don't begrudge anybody being a professional promoter making money, but it needs to be that it's, the accountability's there, and that we're on a level playing field, whether it's on private property or not. If it's a nonprofit, are they playing, if they have live music, are they paying the fees that we pay for our music? I spend about almost $3,000 a year to have my 3 different licensing fees from BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC. Obviously, they're not going to pay that for a few times a year event, but I don't have music that much either. So that's all we're asking for. We don't want to see events go away. I mean, this town is known for events. We just want to make sure there's accountability, and that it's fair for everybody. I don't mind street closures as long as once the event's over, they open up again. And I agree with Greg. 8 o'clock would be a good time to end things as far as we're concerned on certain things. Obviously, the courthouse lighting, the boot drop. What else is it that goes past? The parade, the light parade. Those are important to go obviously later. There isn't booze. And this isn't all just about the booze part either. It's about, being here all year long and participating in the town. We just want the people that are doing it part-time or maybe full-time, it's their business, to be as accountable as we are when it comes to sales tax and licensing fees and all that. So that's all we're asking for. I don't mind street closures as long as they're done responsibly. And the nonprofits are important, so the charities are important.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Mayor, Council, we're back. Been a lot of time spent on this subject, and like Mr. Bain said, he started last October trying to work out the details. And Dave said a lot about what I have to say, and I'm speaking for myself now. I'm not as a Whiskey Row business or anything. But as I said before, I've never turned down an event approval for any closure of any street in 15 years. I'd much rather see a viable town than 100 degrees or 95 that we've been having on June 12th, and you look outside and there's nobody down there. I think that we ought to leave it up to, I'd love to leave it up to you people to take care of all the problems, all the details. And the only challenge we've had, to my knowledge, and I thought we had it all worked out about a month and a half ago, was there is an application, and once it's approved, if some promoter comes in and he lives up to the application, on all the details and everything that's involved there, and he is responsible and lives up to the. Anybody can be a promoter. There was some concern about things we've talked about whether or not the 25% was paid or it wasn't paid, and so on and so forth. But the thing's working backwards. Nonprofits used to be out there trying to raise money all the time for whatever reason. And like was said earlier, they all have their agendas and they have to make money somehow to do their thing. But now then, with this so many events and so many times a year, and we have a situation where now the promoters can come in and say, we'll put on actually go out to a nonprofit and say, you be our sponsor, and we'll give you 25%. Well, who wouldn't take 25%? But they don't do a thing. The promoter's making 75%. The promoter's really running it for his own benefit. Not in every case, but it looks that way. It was mentioned before about private property, and that's why I got the hair up on the back of my neck here a couple of weeks ago. And like Dave said, everything should be on a common ground, and everything should be equal. And I bring up numbers, but my license is probably worth Class 6 liquor only $65,000 if you go out and buy one today. And you got somebody coming in there 12 times during the summer, your best weekends, it costs him $25. And he has the same privileges that I do. He can sell booze for profit, and he keeps 75% of it. $25 times 12 isn't too much. I'm not good at arithmetic here, but $65,000 to get it for the privilege of selling liquor puts you in a different category. And I would rather, believe me, I would rather have people downtown. I don't care if what event it is, the one over in front of Rosa's or over there in front of Firehouse. We still benefit from it because they're not going to stand down there for 4 hours on a pavement in the hot weather in a paper cup drinking beer. They're going to go down there and make their donation, have a few drinks, and they're going to come up to our bars. I've seen it happen over and over again. So you're not getting any gripes from me about that. I would love to have Joe and the council or the committee or the permit people do the job work for us. Just, you guys do it. As long as it's fair and above board and everybody's treated equally. And that's the way I feel about it. What's happening with the promoter aspect of it, and the other thing we need to talk about is, and I thought we had this all figured out, was after being responsible, that we figured out what hours they should keep. And we had a situation happen recently that they asked for, we thought they were going to ask for 11 o'clock, and they asked for 12 o'clock closure, and they got 10 o'clock. Which, maybe they deserved that. I don't know. But and like Marlon said, there are good promoters in this town. And I backed up one of the most well-known one. But when they start going under radar and trying to going direct with the powers to be and not including, the people that are being affected, it kind of, gives you a negative feeling about the whole thing. So, decide what I don't care if you decide what events or not. If it's legal and if it's according to the application, let them have them. Bring them on. I'll get my share. That's the way I feel about it. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tommy. Tommy, we've talked about this too. And I really struggled with this whole thing because it doesn't seem like, when I was talking about spirit of the law, letter of the law, it doesn't seem like that was the intent of the license to do that. But it is private property. It is allowed by the law, and I think we'd have to probably get that changed at the state if we want to get clarity on that. And I don't know how I could vote against those at this time because there's really no justification to do that under private property and being a legal activity. I'm ready to work, and I think those people are probably ready to work on things as well, because I think on this 4th of July, they shut down at 5 p.m., I think.
I'm not sure.
And
see, I don't care.
To work with it, right.
Yeah, I don't care. But let me explain something while I have a chance. That particular piece of property was in the newspaper, and everybody saw it. It was proposed to be a park-like little setting with a walk-through from the parking garage to the plaza on event days and so forth. That's what it was proposed to be. That's what's in our mind. That's what we think they're going to do. That's why we're patting them on the back. That's a neat thing to do. But when it turns the other way and you become competitors, I got my fanny chewed out here by him. Told me it was none of my business the other day. But he also said before that, he said, maybe I should have come and talked to you guys first. And I think that's probably saying a lot right there. How did I know what he had in mind? First time I found out what he was doing is in a council meeting when he presented it. Or maybe I had some lead in the newspaper, come to think of it. But, he needed to talk to us, us being involved, and probably wouldn't have had a problem. But I know Steve had a call on the show the other day, and some guy's beating me up, or whoever that guy was talking, and couldn't figure out why I wasn't for him taking advantage of his own property. But he didn't know all the details, and I didn't go into all the details today, but about the advantages he has over us, sales taxes not being paid, $25 fee, big deal. And if he stays open till 10, 11, 12 at night, that could propose a problem. Now, I don't know how we did over the 4th. We were so busy that I couldn't have taken anybody else anyway. I don't care what happened. I didn't even get a breather. I don't know whether the dance was good or not, but hopefully it was good. I know we got our share, and I think everybody else did. But Joe, I think's done a great job putting all this together, and it's not easy, as you can see. So you live by these, what I see here, living by it,
and Tommy, you're right. Joe has taken this so much forward. I mean, we're not in a quagmire right now. He is taking us in the right direction. You were at a lot of those meetings where we tried to put a lot of these things in action, with having the event boss down there. That was a big step, a simple step, but his staff has done a great job at trying to refine this process, and I think it's just an ongoing thing that we're going to have to keep doing.
Well, I'd be involved in it any way I could, but I'm not going to be against events. And then, Prescott, has been said, and not in all of the details, but we have so much going for us. I mean, look at the accolades we've gotten in the last 2 months of Clean Air, Best Place to Retire, Fortune Magazine, Fortune, all of them. And we've got something here. It was said before, I don't know whether Jimmy or Chris or who it was, for sure, but there's a lot of things go on here, and I don't want to disturb that. And we're getting the day trippers from Phoenix now coming in. Gas prices have been less, and sure, we got some parking, but I don't see a big problem with that. I mean, sure, you got to find a parking place once in a while, but we got a 500 space garage over here that's free. And, I hear people griping about paying $3 on an event day, and I go, give me a break. You don't know what you're talking about. It's free parking year round, basically. Who else has that? And we got trees, and we got courthouses, and we got weather, and we got so much going for us. I don't want to get into a problem where people think it's not being run properly, doesn't have the right chemistry or atmosphere or anything. So more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Excuse me, Mayor, for 1 second, if I could. I just wanted to clarify a couple things. One is the cost recovery that I'm referring to. We've come a long ways on cost recovery from the way that it used to be. Sure. To answer Mr. Michelson's question, we charge for the band shell anytime that's used. The cost recovery I'm talking about is more, the street sweeper comes at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. He would do it anyway, but it's a little heavier than it would normally be because of the special events. My department, which takes care of the landscape rights of way downtown, comes in Monday morning. They've got a little more to deal with. So it's not huge cost recovery. I just wanted to make that clear. And the other thing, Mr. Michelson mentioned balance, and I think that's important. Balance is important, and that's why we brought these to talk about today, hoping that could provide some balance. And really just out of that sheet, real quickly, the 3 things that we kind of need to continue to talk about are enacting a resolution or an ordinance that limits hours of operation, an appropriate fee for street closures. Is that something we want to look at that would help offset some of those things? And then thirdly, consider adjusting the vendor booth fee for nonprofit sponsored events. So thank you.
Mayor, can I make a recommendation?
Yeah.
That myself and whoever else wants to do this, we work with Joe in a coming council meeting. We generate a rough draft to present to council and go from there.
Well, we need to get into the depth of it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mayor?
Anyone else in the audience? John, we don't see you very often.
No, not too often. I'm a little too busy over there at the pub.
You've lost all your hair since I saw you.
I have. I grew a little bit here.
Okay.
I kind of replaced it. Mayor, Council, John Nielsen, Prescott Brewing Company. One of my concerns is the discussion about moving the events off the square. Now, we have the crown jewel of the Southwest right here, that plaza. I only saw one event in 21 years plus in business that hurt my business, and that's when they moved the Bluegrass Festival from Gurley Street over to Goodwin. We saw a decrease in sales. Why? Because the people weren't right there facing Gurley Street. I'm sure all the businesses, of course the owners aren't the past owners now, as far as Lone Spur, they're a new owner a year and a half ago. The yogurt shop changed hands too, but I'm sure those old owners saw the same thing that I saw when that event was moved. So if you want to move events, I mean, to me that's, I mean, you're going to slit your wrists, I think, if you do that, because of the economic impact that we have for Prescott with all those events. Other than that one, I have never seen an event affect my business negatively, even beer events. And you think a beer festival would hurt a brewery hugely because of the amount of beer that's free, because you donate all the beer to the festival for people to consume, that they pay a fee for and they get tickets. It doesn't affect my business one bit. I get more business out of it because people don't want to stand out there for 10 hours or 6 hours or 5 hours on pavement. And they want to sit down somewhere and take a break, and so they come into the pub or they go into the other businesses around the square and sit down, have something to eat, have something else to drink. So I think it's really, if you look at moving them, that's really sketchy. Also on the special event license, I could be wrong, but Title IV, they're allowed to serve alcohol till past 2 a.m. in the morning because that's the Title IV liquor law. So limiting hours for them, I mean, I know it's a good thing to do because we don't serve alcohol that late. We cut it off a lot earlier at night because we don't want to be the last place people are drinking at. But it does, if someone wants to get contentious, would bring up state law, and then, I don't know, you can probably enact an ordinance that would add on to the state law. But anyway, that I think you just be careful with that. I'd hate to see somebody, come down on the city and legally with all that. So, but these events don't hurt my business one bit. They don't. They're great for downtown. People can walk through the square. They can walk across the streets, and that's real important. And when you close one of the streets, say Gurley Street, they only have to drive a block either direction to get around. Same with Montezuma. If you close that Montezuma between Gurley Street and Goodwin, they only have to go another block around to get to it, and it tracks them. I mean, when people come downtown and they don't know something's going on and they drive down Gurley Street and they see there's an event, they want to know what's going on. So it's good for this town. And how do you then also say what's a signature event? Okay, how do you define that? Because there's been events like the Whiskey Off-Road hasn't been here that long. It's only been around a few years. Not like the Bluegrass Festival. It's been here for 25 years. So that's another issue I think that needs to be looked at. I think it's a good idea to have some liaison between council and the committee, and I'll be happy to put my input in if you need a downtown business also.
Okay.
If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay. Anyone for John?
Thank you.
Thanks,
John.
Bruce Reed with Whiskey Row Pub. Just to let you know, guys, on Saturday that Budweiser went through one keg and had a whole pallet of ice and never went through that. And from what I understand on the street dance, they had like 400 or 500 people compared to the days before where it was up in the thousands. I had a lot of feedback from people that, because it hit the paper that the event was going to be shut down at 10. So I had a lot of feedback on that, and a lot of people said, well, we're not going to come down there and pay an entry and then have an issue where we got nowhere to go. And then we also have an occupancy issue downtown. If you have 4,000 people on the street, the occupancy downtown is none of the businesses can handle that. Matt's is 300, I'm at, 2 something. The numbers downtown, when you chop off an event, and I'm not talking about a 501c, I'm talking about any event, when you chop it off, where's 4,000 people going to go, or where's 3,000 people going to go? When you have the occupancy numbers, the fire department came by because, you guys had asked a question of what is the occupancy downtown, which was a great idea, because if you have all of them people and you chop an event, they all got to get in their cars and they all got to go home, because we can only do 800 people, 900 people. I don't have the numbers either, but it's pretty small. If I'm at 250, 270, and Matt's is at 300, and we're the two main lead bars in town, everybody else is at 100 and something, so that's pretty small numbers. So I definitely think that this thing needs to be handled, because people want to party, and if a party's being destroyed at 10 o'clock and they get out, they get off work at 5, they eat supper, they come down at 8, and I'm not regarding on to a 501c, I'm not regarding to any of nonprofit or profit or whatever. I'm just letting you guys know what happened this Saturday.
So that I'm clear, you have no problem with the events, the ones that are handled on Montezuma, of operating later?
Right. Well, it's the feedback that I got was not good, and there was maybe 30 people in that beer gardens across from me on Whiskey Row. So, and it started filling up about 9:15, and by 10 o'clock, and they went through 1 keg of beer, and they had a whole truck full of beer, and they had a whole pallet full of ice. And I ended up getting some ice from them, and Matt's got a bunch of ice from them, and because people ran out of ice, we ran out of ice because we've been, for 3 days it's been slamming downtown. So, but I just want to give you guys the feedback on that so you can get a better idea on, before we go to a devastation situation where, Prescott's been Whiskey Row, it's been a party town. People come here to see the tourism, the artwork, everything that happens downtown. And if you start taking the fun out of it.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd just like to add a footnote to his comment. Several young people commented to me, and I don't go downtown and dance late at night, but they do.
Right.
And they like to have fun. They pointed out that it's impossible to leave the rodeo. If you want to watch the rodeo till it closes at 9, it's impossible to leave there with the traffic and get downtown by 10 o'clock. And it's not worth paying the entry fee for, if you can make it for the last 5 minutes.
Right.
So I personally think we made a mistake for the 4th of July and with the rodeo event.
I mean, we made money, don't get me wrong, Marlon. After the end of the year, last year numbers, I'm up $1,000. But I had to wait 6 years for a Saturday. 6 years ago, my numbers 6 years ago were higher than the numbers this time. And, you got Pioneer Park. It takes 2 hours to get out of there. It's a mess. It's a plugged up mess. By the time they get downtown, it might be midnight. So, what you guys are trying to cover is events that happen all year round. It's not just, this is just what happened on the 4th of July. Now, normally Pioneer Park is not happening, whatever's focused on downtown with a 501c or not, or whatever, or bands, it just was an odd situation. We had the dance over by the Windsock, and we had the deal downtown and in Pioneer Park, so it was all and the rodeo, and it was all spread out, and that's what really affected, the beer, the 501c. It really affected them this time around. Normally it doesn't balance that way, but I just want to let you guys know that there's a lot more. I think this really needs to be thought about in full. A lot of things, the occupancy, all of it. It really needs to be very carefully, because you guys could turn this town into a ghost town if people are not careful on what's happening. So I'm just giving you guys feedback on this.
Good. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Anything further back here?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something, because I think it was kind of implied that maybe something was sneaky going on with the liquor licenses going to midnight when the event was only supposed to last till 10 or 11 o'clock. The reason that you have that go past is to save you from making a mistake with the liquor board. And I think a perfect example of that was 100 Club when they came for their liquor license. It said midnight as well, but they had already put out flyers that said the event was ending at 10. What that keeps you from happening to you is that when the event ends at 10 and the band comes off the stage, if they pop a beer after 10 o'clock, you just committed liquor license violations. You know, it allows you to close down, clean up, and get stuff done before midnight. It just gives you a little breathing room. So when they had their event and it ended at 10 o'clock, if anybody in there had a beer after that, they could have gotten in big trouble and had the badge come out. And the liquor board does cruise those events. I've seen it happen. I saw a bartender take a drink, the badge came out and pop. Now there goes all the profits for your charity in that one liquor license fine. So it's it wasn't sneaky. It's just it went to midnight, and it protects you for when you close down at 10 or 11 o'clock. It gives you a little breathing room to get everything cleaned up and everybody out of there.
Okay. So, Greg, you and Chris are willing to work with Joe, and we, yeah. I was wondering when you were going to show up.
I'd just like to maybe reinforce a couple things I've heard today. First of all, the idea of taking the larger view for the community is very important. I mean, it's not just the big brothers and the big sisters, the chamber having the money to put the Bluegrass Festival on, and it's the downtown partnership being able to put on the light parade. And there's a lot of things that the city doesn't have to do because of the nonprofits and the fundraising they do. But and we appreciate the help we do get from the city, but we also expect to make these things happen on our own too. It's interesting. I got called on earlier or last week by some people from the Rural Policy Forum that's coming up in August, and they asked me what I could talk about downtown Prescott and make a presentation. And the first thing that came to mind was that downtown Prescott is evolving. It's changing. The market, our tourist market, is different than it used to be. It's not folks going looking at old houses. It's younger people who want to have activities and entertainment. So we're reacting to that. We're seeing events, more things to capture that tourist. Also, it's the businesses downtown are reacting. And the time, I was in business downtown for 26 years. Certainly Councilman Lamerson can attest to the fact that there are different businesses downtown. When you opened your business, when I opened my business, you could buy socks and underwear downtown. Not anymore.
Can't even get a tank of gas.
No, you can't get a tire changed, or it's different.
Yeah, we had a whole bunch of social do-gooders come in and tell us what we should and shouldn't do.
But businesses react to the market. I mean, the businesses who are successful have evolved too, and we have a different kind of business downtown, and we need to acknowledge that. We need to take the larger view as far as sales tax collections go.
Thank you, Kendall. That kind of disturbs me what I'm listening to right now by cause and effect. That's exactly what's going on here. You start changing the prodigal image of what Whiskey Row was, what downtown Prescott was. Now all of a sudden we're starting to evolve into, and I don't mean to be offensive to anybody, I truly don't, but Yuppieville's really not Prescott. We're something different. And every time we do something, we better think it through.
I'm agreeing with you. I think that's important. That. Yeah, okay. And we can't make it stay, we can't freeze it in time. We can do the best we can to take care of our asset, but we're going to have to evolve. And I think that's kind of what we're bumping up against right now is the fact that times are changing, and we need to look and see what we can do to keep the best we can and still do the right thing by our town.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Joe, you know where we're coming from?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. And let's not wear this out. Let's get moving on it, and so in the next month or so we can come to some conclusions. Okay. Okay. John, looks like you're the next.
Well, Mayor, Council, there was a request to have a discussion regarding the city's sign code, and this discussion is going to be somewhat limited to signage on public property. The land development code is sort of a whole separate conversation. Generally speaking, the land development code, with a couple of exceptions, is workable under the current case law. There are some fixes that need to be made on it. So the discussion today really needs to, or the direction today discussion, sort of focusing on the question of what does the council, what directions the council want to give on temporary signage essentially on city rights of way. We do have some limitation or prohibition, I should say, on signage in city parks. So for the most part, the public property we're talking about is the rights of way. Without going into too much detail and sort of trying to avoid, a heavy discussion of legal advice in public, but really what it boils down to now is that the council, the city has sort of two choices when it comes to temporary signage in the right of way. And that is to ban it altogether, which is allowed under pretty long-standing Supreme Court interpretation, or to level the playing field in that the regulations that could be adopted for temporary signage in the right-of-way would all have to be treated the same regardless of the content or the type of sign.
John, let me ask a question. Your comment, temporary signage in the right-of-way. We also have permanent signage in the right-of-way that has evolved.
Well, permanent signage in the right-of-way is really going to come from two sources. One, government. In other words, street signs, directional signs, stop signs, even our the city banners on the historic light post downtown. Those are treated differently. Essentially, government speech, for lack of a better term, is given sort of a pass in this. So we're talking about is signs by private speakers, which would include, I can go down, campaign signs, real estate signs, event signs, welcome rodeo fan signs, sandwich boards. So commercial speech, political campaign, there's sort of two kinds of political speech. There are specific campaign signs, and then there are what are, I guess, referred to as ideological signs, sort of just generic political speech.
Okay, is a sandwich board, is that a temporary sign?
It's considered a temporary sign if it's on the sidewalk. And when we talk about right-of-way, we're talking about either city sidewalks or along the street where maybe there isn't a sidewalk, on the sort of curb and gutter part or adjacent to the asphalt. So yeah, we're talking about that as the city right-of-way.
Yard sale signs?
Yard sale signs that are put out on a sidewalk. In other words, the challenge, there's sort of the legal discussion, but I think the more complicated part of it is if there's going to be this regulation of temporary private signs in the right-of-way, the real challenge is going to be how do you enforce it? In other words, especially when it comes to timing issues. If for instance you say, and this is the actual sort of Gilbert case where, and we don't have this sort of same definition, but If there's a particular event, how long can that sign be up in advance of that event? And I'll give you a real world, for instance, which we just talked about was the Whiskey Row dance. Those signs were up in the right-of-way. Or welcome rodeo fans. That's sort of an event-type signage. That is in the city right-of-way. How far in advance should those be able to be put up? And then if you sort of start saying, well, the timing has to be equal, how far in advance can you put up a campaign sign? And so it gets really complicated in that regard because there's no clear guidance. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court is supposed to tell you what the Constitution says and means, but it doesn't act like a legislature and say this is how you do it. It just sometimes they try, but anyway. The options are, certainly the city has every, in spite of that statute that we talked about before, which I don't think is enforceable anymore. The city has every right to ban signage in its right-of-way, on sidewalks, along the roads, whether it's a real estate sign, whether it's an open house sign, whether it's a cardboard box that says sale this way, a yard sale sign, whether it's a sandwich board sign on the sidewalk. The city has every right to prohibit those from being in the right-of-way. Because the flip side of it's going to be some pretty complicated objective criteria. In other words, we can regulate size, we can regulate materials, we can prohibit lighting, we can prohibit moving parts, noise, those kinds of things, because those are
visual,
objective.
like it's just life safety, like blocking the.
Yeah, you betcha.
Well, well, certainly it could be. The size of the sign relative to its location in terms of, let's say the sidewalk is 6 feet across or 7 feet across. Normally under ADA you have to have at least 4 feet of clearance, so the sign would be limited to say 2 or 3 feet depending on the width of a sidewalk. So there are non-content based ways to regulate. I would suggest that that's something that would take some time to try and get to, and then even if we get to that, it becomes somewhat of a challenge for enforcement by code enforcement or the city streets department to say, does this meet or not meet the requirements?
Okay, let's talk about signage on private property. That's covered by a sign ordinance.
By the Land Development Code, right.
Yeah. So if all signage went on private property, then there's another issue of size, shape. My understanding, which is certainly not the whole thing, but a part of what got Gilbert in trouble was the content of the signs. They were allowing certain signs and were not allowing certain signs.
Gilbert was allowing, for instance, political signs to be put up in a right-of-way for a certain period of time, but limiting, in that particular instance, the basically church service type signs. They could only be put up 24 hours before the time of the service, and had to be removed by sometime later that day. And so what the Supreme Court basically said is you're treating that speech, because of its content, differently than you're treating political speech. So the question there was, well, if you allow for signs in the right-of-way, like a campaign sign, for instance, say 90 days before the beginning of early voting, so essentially that's the beginning of the 30-day long event, do you have to allow, the argument would be under that case, you'd have to allow every other sign to be up for at least 90 days prior to the date of the event. Now, if you have a church service every Sunday, it's pretty much a permanent sign, because there is it's just a rolling 90 days. So in other words, you're you're pretty much you'd have to allow that event to be, or that sign to be up there all the time. And I think that was the challenge.
So it kind of boils down all or none.
It does kind of boil down to that. That's kind of what the Supreme Court did. It told you all or nothing in a lot of ways.
And both can be harmful. Both of them can be harmful. If we went nothing or we went everything, both have its consequences.
And that's why, I think there was a desire to have this discussion today is there's no right or wrong answer, but it is, Mayor, you hit it right on the head. It's sort of an all or nothing kind of result. And I think that, when we say if you don't allow any signs, for instance, if you don't allow any signs in a right-of-way, there can be adjustments made, and particularly for, events. The Welcome Rodeo fans, the
yard sales?
Maybe, well, I'm talking about more like the public events, what we just talked about essentially. You could make adjustments to the land development code, sign code, to allow for temporary event signage, say up to X number of square feet, no lighting, certain types of material on the private property, so that the private, particularly commercial, and the court says you could distinguish and between signage on commercial property versus residential property. So we don't have to allow commercial signs on residential property, or we don't have to allow for billboards at all, for that matter. So, there are sort of solutions, I guess, in the sense of if the city were to ban temporary signs in the right-of-way, campaign signs could only be put on private property, commercial or residential. You can distinguish, and in that regard, you can distinguish between the amount of square footage a campaign sign would be allowed to have on a commercial property versus a residential property. You could allow for, additional temporary signage for events that aren't on the commercial premises, up to X amount of square feet per day, for instance. So in other words, the Welcome Rodeo fans, the Whiskey Road Dance, those kinds of signs could be put up on the private property. Obviously, you need the permission of the private property owner. But the land development code would have to be sort of adjusted to sort of maybe take the place of the city's right-of-way. I mean, and the rationale for banning signs in the right-of-way is one of aesthetics and, and there is a sort of a health safety issue there. They can, even signs, they can be distracting to drivers and those kinds of things. So there's that. It really comes down to, obviously we're not taking any action today, but sort of a discussion on, the pros and cons, because both sides have benefits or both, either decision has a benefit, either decision has a
that's
negative.
where this whole thing started. Was the proliferation of signs in public right-of-way is what caused the city to take a look at this. Yeah. And, it has worked. But now we have a higher authority that says we can't do that anymore.
Unfortunately, we can allow for signage in the city rights of way, but the difficulty is going to be coming up with a sort of one-size-fits-all regulation, and then once you have that, then it becomes Mike's not here anymore, but it becomes code enforcement or the streets department. They have to then go out and somehow enforce it and figure out does this meet the code? And that's a challenge too in and of itself.
Well, it's not a big issue. It's not hard to do to get permission for signs on private property. It's just a matter of contacting the owner, and if they believe in what you have, it's never been an issue. So maybe that's where it ought to be.
I think I would rather have it there than see the proliferation like you see in Phoenix, Tempe, those places where during the political rush, you can't even see around an intersection because of 15,000 signs for political warfare. Not only challenging other candidates, but the candidate signs themselves. Personally, I would say outlaw all signs in the public right-of-way and only allow them on private property.
I'd agree with that.
I think all has more disadvantages than nothing, than to ban them all together, because I think the proliferation would just go nuts.
I thought our ordinance was a good one. You know, it worked for about 3 election cycles, and you know, all the information on how to place it was down here. You could have got that information. Mark, could you put this up there on the screen for me?
Skid marks.
He's a graphic guy.
I'm a graphic guy. But you know, like if I have to vote, I really don't want to take the real estate signs out. You know, you want that out there by the street to help you sell your house. I don't mind the sandwich boards on the sidewalk. That really doesn't bother me.
That's an ADA issue.
Yeah, thank you. But anyway,
It'll make skid marks too.
Right here. This is my house right here, and this is, if we got to go all or nothing, this is why I say nothing. You see how much of my front yard is outside of my property on the city right-of-way. You know, suppose I think Mickey Mouse is the worst candidate that ever came up for city council. Someone could place Mickey Mouse for city council right in my yard, which insinuates that's who I'm supporting. Now, if I go out there and take that sign down that's in my yard but yet in the city right-of-way, that's a Class 2 misdemeanor. That can carry jail time. That carries monetary signs. It could be used against me, or not even a candidate, but what about an issue? So if I have to vote for all or nothing, I'm going to vote for nothing and keep it cleaned up in here.
Thank you.
Well, and you know, when it comes to real estate for sale signs, for instance, you know, you put them on the lot, and they're you know, I think there will be a transition and a learning curve, I think, because we all see, you know, that weekend open house with this, you know, the arrow pointing you know, along the highway or on some of the major arterials. You know, and on weekends you do see the cardboard box with the rocks in it that say, you know, garage sale, you know, pointing down the street, you know, on the arterials. And so there's going to be a learning curve a little bit to it, you know, if there's ban. But I will tell you that the other cities, they simply just pick them up. You know, they don't, there's no fine, there's no.
We just need to put Ed Perry back to work.
Well, people have gotten around it by just
kept our right-of-ways
like they put the yard sale
years.
sign on their vehicle and park their vehicle.
Well, you know, and there'll be ways of I think Mark talked about, you know, sort of voluntary compliance with the tax code, and the people will attempt to find loopholes, like putting a sign on a car and parking it. I mean, but the primary purpose of that, you know, I'm not sure that's not necessarily a sign, that's an automobile and it's parked on the street, and if it has something on it, you know, it's one of those gray areas. You can't, there's no way to sort of cover every possible scenario. So, you know, and as I think I provided to the council, if you look at our code, if you look at the end of the right-of-way code, it basically says no signs in the right-of-way, except if you meet one of the exceptions. Then you back up the code, and there's about 3 pages of exceptions. So at some point, the exception swallows the rule. So it's a relatively, I mean, I will tell you from that standpoint, it's a relatively easy fix. You just strike out all the exceptions from the code, and you have your language that says no signs in the right-of-way. Now, again, make it real clear when it comes to street, you know, city signs, traffic signs, you know, health and safety signs, state route signs, all those kinds of, you know, the welcome to Prescott sign, all of the things that are put up by the city, you know, that's not included. Obviously, those remain. Even the current banner program we have, where the city's putting up its own banners on the historic streetlights, that's okay, and that doesn't open the door for anybody else. The only exception, I think, is it's in the right-of-way code, and it talks about that there are some signs, some permanent signs, some permanent monument type signs that are actually in the right-of-way where the property owner has gotten some sort of variance because the property abuts on a commercial property. Those are different. Those will be treated differently, and they still have to go through that variance process. But that all sort of those kinds of signs are you know, business signs, permanent signs, and where a monument might encroach into the right-of-way. Essentially, you get an encroachment permit for that kind of thing. It's completely different. For the most part, most of our right-of-way code currently says you can do this many signs, and if you want to do more than that, you have to then get a permit, and you can do, you know, X number more or something, depending on the sign. So it becomes very, like I said, complicated. But ultimately, it is. You may hit around the head. It's an all or nothing sort of decision, and the justification for prohibiting them altogether is primarily aesthetics and traffic safety, because they can be distracting. Yeah. And the third is the cost of enforcement if you start allowing them. May be pretty substantial, because you have to also not only have an evenly drafted code, then you got to evenly enforce it, and that becomes personnel.
Sounds like a can of worms. I think you've got some direction here. You've got 2, you've got 3. Bring it to us.
All right.
Let's get a vote.
Roger that.
Yeah, I had a lot of my signs yanked down too, Mayor. It's nothing personal. It's just sometimes you get over anxious volunteers, and they put them in the wrong place or something, or even I put them in the wrong place.
Okay.
Well, and I think that, like I said, if this code is amended to prohibit signs in the right of way, there's going to be a learning curve, and I think our code enforcement does a really good job in terms of trying to work with people. We're not writing tickets. They're trying to get cooperation and compliance, and so I'm confident that if that's the direction the council goes, it's not going to be heavy-handed as enforcement.
It's a start.
After you stab at the last one, John, I'm real comfortable with everything I'm going to guarantee you. You know what I mean? Fact of the matter is, I feel about this issue the same as I feel about a business license. Treat them all the same or not at all. It's just that simple.
Yeah. That's a good answer.
Comments from the public? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Sandra Smith. I'm at 701 Whites Bar. I've had some issues with the ADA thing and the signboards, particularly the sandwich board things. There was one up at the car wash on Sheldon, and there have been some others around in different places. And usually, if I can find somebody that works there or the owner and just ask them to situate it where it's not in the middle of the sidewalk, because I haven't found those 7-foot sidewalks, by the way. Where are those besides the courthouse square? They will move them and keep them moved. I try to talk to the people who own the business or run the business first. And I think that probably works most diplomatically anyway. But sometimes the political signs and other signs that get strung up on there, they can be a real hazard. Not only are you busy eyeballing and when you should be looking at the road or whatever, they can be in the way visibility-wise. So I would say, ban them all is fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mary Beth Wren, I'm just asking a question as a way of clarification. So what about the signs that are in the right-of-way as of this moment? The campaign signs?
Till we had a ordinance in place with the proper notices and so forth, they'll be where they are. Yeah, Mike?
Well, any change to the city code, won't take effect, until we come back and council adopts an ordinance, and then it's usually a 30-day. So currently, I'm not sure. Well, I don't think that our current sign code is in terms of the right-of-way signs is enforceable as it's currently written under the case. So
if signs are placed in the right-of-way now, they will be permitted to stay in the right-of-way? That's my
yeah. As ugly as that sounds, yeah, I think that's the law.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
They are what they are.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Okay.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks for being here. We're out of here.
You spoke.